Hello everybody, it's Kim. It is a beautiful day here in Michigan. It's a little over, about 75 degrees. It's beautifully sunny and the weather is gorgeous. We have a slight breeze. And I figured today was a perfect day for me to practice some of my skills that I discussed in a previous video. And I'll link that in the description box below. If you recall, I did a video about the 10 C's of survival, but I added 5 of my own, with number 1 being confidence. Knowing the skills that you need and practicing those skills. And today I'm going to go over one of the extremely basic things in life that everybody needs, and I'm going to show you a couple ways to practice those skills. And that has to do with water. Now you're thinking, well, I live in the city. I don't have to worry about that. I'm in the middle of the country. I have my own well. Technically, do I need to worry about it? I'm telling you, everybody needs to think about it. How many times have you received a boil water alert in your city? You're in an apartment and the building knocks on your door and says, hey, we had a water main break and you got to boil water for the next 3 or 4 days. And you're thinking, oh, great, that's wonderful. But you're still getting that water. That's a good thing, right? Well, what if a tornado ripped through your area and took out your water plant and now there is no water for you to obtain? Or you had a massive flooding situation, all power's out, you've got a natural disaster. We in Michigan here had a dam break not too long ago. And, you know, people were flooded out. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have power. Their water supply was contaminated. And maybe they didn't have the means to just, boil water. If you've got 6 inches of standing water and everything's soaking wet, you can't just go start a fire. So I'm going to show you a couple ways that you can get water to have around your house. Now, if you look up FEMA, one thing that they tell you is that you should store 1 gallon, this is the bare minimum a human being needs per day, 1 gallon per person per day for a week. Okay? So do you have 7 gallons of water sitting around waiting for a natural disaster? In my son's case, he's a family of 6. They need a minimum of 42 gallons for 1 week. And that is not including, it's maybe a little bit of a sponge bath, but that does not include flushing your toilet, if you're even able to do that, and using extra water to boil food and things like that. So, you need at least half of that for drinking water every day. So I live out in the middle of the country. I have my own well. There's a good possibility my well could get contaminated if we had any kind of flooding or something like that. So I might not be able to just dip into my well and pull up some fresh drinking water. So I'm going to show you a couple of sources I have here. One would be, the first one I'm going to show you is my last ditch effort, and a couple of the other things that I keep around here, and maybe give you some suggestions on what you might have around your house. So let's get this started so I don't talk too long anyway. Okay, I didn't know if you saw it in the video behind me, but this is my duck's favorite place to go. And as you can see, it looks like a pretty disgusting bit of water right now. Luckily we had a great big rain here a few days ago and this thing filled back up, but as you can see, it's pretty murky. If I needed water, this would be the last thing I would want to get my water from. Just because, if you've ever been around ducks, they are very messy little animals, and quite frankly, they poop a lot, and they poop in their water. So if I had to, in a complete disaster, drink out of this pond, I know how to do it, and I can show you a couple of ways. First of all, most importantly, I would have to make some type of a filter just to get out as much mud and gunk and critters or whatever to, make it even plausible to want to drink this. Okay, so what other sources do I have around my house? All right, let's go see what else I have. Okay, I'll apologize for the noise. The turkeys are going to make a lot of noise, but this is my stock tank. This is what I keep filled up to give my animals their daily water. Now remember when I told you about stocking up a minimum of 1 gallon per day per person. You also have to think about your pets. Okay, I have a dozen turkeys here. I have 4 potbelly pigs, 3 goats. We have 6 cats on the property and 3 dogs and a bunny rabbit. So I have to include water in my scenario for them. Now, I don't have to purify it for drinking like I do for me, but I have to make sure I have proper storage for my animals as well. So this is a 300, I believe it's a little over 300 gallon tank that we use, just make it a little more convenient for me. We use a sump pump, we pump it into here. I can pull it off that little tube there and into the bucket, and I can fill up my animals. But in an emergency situation, I can purify some of this water for our own needs as well. So here's a second source of water that I have. Okay, I wanted to show you. I have another one of those tanks here. It collects water off of this roof here, and quite frankly, it gets a lot of debris in it. I do use this mostly for my garden. We tend to get a lot of drought here. Even though I'm in Michigan, I've only had a little over 2 inches of rain since June in my area, and that happened to come within the last few days. So I do not have a spout hooked up on this one like I do at the one in the barn. I would have to find a way to get my water out of the top here. As you can see, it's full to the top. I could dip it out into a bucket or something, and then obviously I would need to filter this one because it does have the debris from the roof. But this gives me another 300 gallons of water that is usable, you know, for whatever my needs and my animals' needs are. So that gives me a third source of water here on my property. Okay, this is the cistern that our well runs from. This is our primary source of water here. If necessary, luckily I have the ability, I could, although you can see it's getting very low, I could drop a bucket down in there. I would make some kind of a pulley system, maybe lash a tripod together and drop a bucket down in there. I could dip out some water, but if it's flooded and I'm standing in, you know, ankle deep water, that's going to be a very contaminated source of water. I could, luckily, you know, use it to flush toilets and whatnot, but that's our primary source of water, and as you can see, we're getting low. So we do worry about water here. That's my number 4 source of water. Okay, for our 5th source of water, we are extremely fortunate here that we have another cistern here. It sits about 10 feet behind my house. We use this, as you can see, I have a hose attached, and this is the one I use to keep that water tank in the barn filled up. And in an emergency, I can use it to water my garden and things like that. So this one, as well as the house well, could easily get contaminated, and it goes dry. You know, it gets so low that it turns into mud at the bottom. But this is our 5th source of water, and I cannot drink straight out of this. I would need to purify this one as well. So this is number 5, and then I have another couple little sources, and I'll show you next. Okay, this is a 100-gallon stock tank. Now, I keep this right next to my house. Basically, it catches water that when we get a big downpour, it leaks through that gutter. And up until a couple of days ago, this was completely empty. I was using it to water the garden. And like I said, we had drought-like conditions here. But this is probably if everything was contaminated and I didn't have to get into my IBC totes over there, those 300-gallon totes, this is where I would get my water from that I would purify for drinking water. You know, it's not the cleanest. I don't know if you can see it as well as I can, but there's debris floating in there. There's little critters floating around in there. It has to be purified, And that's what the one that we're going to look at today. Between this one and my little one over here, my little one I'll show you next is the primary, the first place I would take my water from, because it's the first one that would get empty. But we're going to talk about purifying water, and we're going to use this well or this tank here to do the purification demonstrations. But let me show you my last little source over here. Okay, you might be able to see in here a little bit better. This sits at the end of the gutter here. Water flows over it, over spills, and I collect this to water my plants on the porch and stuff. But if I had to drink it, between this and that stock tank would be the first place I would take it from. It's, you know, I see critters floating around in there. It's got some leaves and other debris. It came off the roof. We're surrounded by trees, so, you know, birds poop on the roof. It's not safe to drink, and it would definitely need to be purified. So I have at least 7 sources of water here that, unless I'm in a total drought and they're empty, which they were most of the summer, I would be able to get some type of water to drink. Okay, let me mention, now, you know, I understand most people do not have the sources that I have for their drinking water. I made sure to have these available because I'm in the country and it's difficult, you know, if I'm stuck here and I can't get out, I have to get my water. One source that you may have in your average home, maybe not so much in an apartment, but you might be able to find a way to get to it, is a standing hot water tank. That's purified water when it comes into your home. You have to know how to get it from the bottom of your tank. It's not difficult at all. But the average home has, you know, 40 or 50 gallons sitting there. So in my son's case, I think they have about a 40-gallon hot water tank. He has almost his week's worth of water for his family right there in his home that does not even have to be purified right away. So, you know, remember that source in your home. Unless your water tank is completely underwater, say in a hurricane, it should be safe to drink and relatively easy to get to. So let's talk about purification you're in an apartment, or in my case out in the country, and your water sources become contaminated and you need to know how to purify that. And you should have always 2 methods of purification at all times, whether it be by boiling, and that's only going to work if say you have an electric stove and your electricity is working, or, you know, you haven't been flooded out and you can make a fire outside. And not everybody has the ability to just go out and make a fire. If you're in an apartment, you can't certainly, you know, go out and start a fire in your apartment. So we'll talk about a couple ways to purify water, one of which would be a filter, and I'll give you another option that really simple that everybody should know. So let's go in the house for a minute and we'll talk about the first one. Okay, I'm just going to go over this really briefly because I'm sure everybody knows how to boil water, okay? If you have a way to put it on your stove, if not, you know, I remember when I only had an electric stove and we had to boil water, I had the little propane grill that had the little cook stove on the side. I could use that. Or in worst case scenario, you're going to have to build a fire. So, you know, when I looked up the FEMA website, boiling water is your number 1 way to kill bacteria, protozoa, other things, giardia, and things that you find in your water, at least here in North America. Okay, I didn't look up Mexico or, you know, Africa or anything like that. So boiling water is your number 1 way to kill pathogens. Now, what most people don't know or fully understand is I called 6 different people and I said, what do you consider boiling water? And they're like, well, you know, an emergency. Well, as long as it has bubbles. Well, see, there's on the bottom there, this is technically just about to come to a boil. This is not a boil in the FEMA regulations. Just because there's a few bubbles coming up. And the second question is, how long do you need to boil it for? And you know, a couple of people said, well, I don't know, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, you know, whatever. What FEMA recommends and of course it depends on the clarity of your water, at least 1 minute at a full rolling boil. Okay? Now, this is, to most people, this is a boil. This is not a full rolling boil. Now remember, I'm doing this on a stove. If you have a fire in your yard, it's going to take a little bit longer. And you need to get it to a full rolling boil for a minimum of 1 minute. I tend to do overboard. I'd probably do 5, but you know, now we're getting close to the full rolling boil. A full rolling boil is when that surface is literally bubbling, bubbling, bubbling. You should be able to take a spoon or whatever, put it in this water, and not be able to make those bubbles go away. See, I just kind of basically stopped what it was doing here. So I'm not quite there yet. A full rolling boil means that this is bubbling and boiling over. Like if you were going to, you know, boil potatoes, you're worried about them coming over the top. This is a full rolling boil. This is what you need to see. You need to see it at least this strong for 1 full minute. This is my full rolling boil, and it's not even been a minute yet. So I just wanted you to see this is what they mean by a full rolling boil. At least 1 minute, okay? And it needs to be done. If you're going to do this outside, you need to see this. So if you're making a campfire or whatever, you need to have this happening to your water. Now I'm going to show you if in the event that you can't do it in your house, I have other ways much faster to do this. Okay, I came back outside here because I want to show you what I carry in my car. I upgraded my water system. I also have a filter that I use, but this is a quick method that you can use to boil water if you're on the go, and you can use this at home. It's very safe to use at home. Again, it's another FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Association way to purify water that is completely safe. And many of you have this around the house already. Okay, the reason I use a sock, a couple of reasons. If I'm out backpacking or something like this, I can use the sock as an insulator to keep condensation from dripping off. And you'll notice that there's a little bulge here. It also holds some of my supplies that I can use to filter water here. And the sock itself could be used as a filter. So, this is just hooked to my little, get home bag or everyday carry bag. And I know I measured all of my containers. If you're going to use it to boil water, you need a single walled container. It cannot be the insulated kind. That's the other reason I added the insulation, because it's not going to boil properly. You'll never get it to that rolling boil, and it could explode with the pressure in between the two chambers. So this little sock does a couple of things for me. It acts as a filter, acts as a way to carry extra things, very lightweight obviously, and I can use it as kind of like a cozy, like you would, like you do on your beer outside or whatever. Okay, so inside here, the first couple of things I carry is a couple of plain old coffee filters. Don't weigh anything. You can get 100 of them for $1 at the dollar store. This is one very simple way to filter your water. Okay? So I just keep it in there. It works. It stays right there. The other way I'm going to teach you, and this could be used out in the field or at home, is with plain old household. It's called sodium hypochlorite, or I don't know if you can read it, plain old household bleach. Now, it has to be plain bleach. It cannot be any kind of scent to it. Sorry about that. We just had a vehicle go by. It cannot have any kind of scent to it, and it cannot be that anti-spill pour stuff, anti-drip or splash or whatever they call it, because they put additives in there. And it must be a minimum of 5% sodium hypochlorite. And I'll show you a picture of mine in just a second here. I'll show you this really quick. This is, as you can see, it's not the splash guard and there are no scents in here. But what you need to do is look at your label. This one happens to say more concentrated, so it's not the very basic. But you will see where it says sodium hypochlorite. You need minimum 5%. Because this is more concentrated, it's 7.5. So this is what you need to see on your label. In my little setup here, I have my bottle. Again, I could boil in it or I can filter it. So just to make this stand up a little easier, I'm going to take that sock off. Again, I could use the sock as a filter. But for me, just to fill it up a little easier, I like to keep a small funnel with my stuff. So I could put my funnel. I can now take my filter. I could stick it in my little funnel here. And I went back outside. Remember I said my emergency source is that stock tank right there. So I could take my water from my stock tank and I can pour it through my filter. And it might take a little bit, you know, you got to get the filters kind of wet at first. And I can fill that up. As you can see, look, I've got, looks like some mosquito larvae. I need to go find my dunks. Look like they disintegrated. I certainly, you know, I guess if you want to drink that, that's fine. You can leave it in your water. But a simple filter that most people have laying around the house. If you don't want to use that, you can pour it through the sock. You can use a bandana, piece of cloth, whatever you have laying around. So I'm just going to fill up this bottle really quick here, and then I'll tell you what we need to do to add the bleach. My ducks are playing here behind me. Okay, as you can see, you know, I got some debris out of there. I got some little critters out of there. This is where the coffee filters. It takes a little bit longer through a coffee filter, but like I said, you can use a cotton bandana, you could use a sock, whatever you have on hand, some way to pre-filter your water. Okay, so, you know, I wouldn't be too happy drinking that water, you know, unless you like to think you get a little protein from the mosquito larvae, but sorry, not me. So now I have pre-filtered water in my bottle, and this bottle happens to be 28 ounces. But I'm going to give you a formula here. You need 4 drops of 5% sodium hypochlorite or plain household bleach per quart or liter of water. Okay? So 4 drops per quart. 2-liter bottle would be 8 drops. 16 drops to the gallon. So, you know, however you want to work that out. Now, I could take and just dump this and hope I get, in this case, I'm going to need 3 drops because of the size of this container. But I found a couple of ways to do that. One is, sometimes it's easier just to dip your finger, let it come form a drop. Doesn't always work very well, but that's one way to get a drop. It's not wanting to form the drop on my finger. I can see the drop, but it's not coming off. Okay, 1 drop. Once I get a certain amount, it will work. 2 drops. In this case, I need 3. 3 drops, okay? I did not spill too much in there, and that's good. The other thing you can do, take that extra filter. You could take and tear off a small piece on the edge, like so. Let's get it under there where you can see it. Just tear off a small piece. Still a usable filter. You could do this with a cotton string, maybe a piece of paracord, whatever you may have. And you're going to make yourself a little wick. I'm just going to take this and twist it. It's a little bit long, but it'll work. Okay. Now this is more for if you're out in the field, obviously. If you have a way to, make your little thing at home, it would work. Now take that, put it in your cap with your bleach in it. Let it soak up that water. I actually dip it all the way in. And it's going to start wicking that over the side. It does take a little bit of time, so you have to be patient. But you should see a drop form. Oh, I'm probably running a little bit low on the bleach in the cap, so. Okay, I don't know if you can see it. Oh, there, I just got a drop. It doesn't take a lot of time, but once it gets going, here comes another drop. 2. Now, obviously, I have too much bleach in here. It's probably better to put too much than not enough. I just wanted to show you how easy it was to get those drops going. Let me get you a different angle here. You can see a little bit better. Watch those drops come off into the container here. There you go. So you can easily make a wick that you can drip that into the water. Okay, let me get you back up here. Then the last thing you want to do as you wait for the cars to drive by, it's never been this busy on this road, you put your lid on or cover it with your hand, whatever you have to do, and give it a good shake. You want to make sure all the water is, full with the bleach. Now you let it sit for 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes. Once your 30 minutes is up, it is perfectly safe to drink. So, if I was doing this in a house, I'd probably do, a day's worth in one time and get it over with, put my bleach in there and be done with it. So, all right, there you go. I showed you at least 2 methods on how to sanitize your water, or sterilize, I should say, for home use. It works on the trail as well. If I were to break down in my car and have to walk home, I know that I have at least 2 methods, which is boil and bleach. And I happen to carry a third method, which is a Sawyer mini water filter. You could pick those up for $20 at Walmart, Target. I'm not sure what they're going for on Amazon right now, but for 20 bucks, they're worth having. You can, purify hundreds of gallons of water with those. They're very easy to use. I'm not showing you that method right now only because I can't believe how much traffic we're getting. Only because then I'm going to have to do a whole bleach cycle to, get my filter ready to go back in my ready bag. And I have that in my car. I'm honestly thinking of picking up another one just to keep in the house. And a fourth method would be the water purification tablets. And quite frankly, that's my last method of choice, only because I think they make the water taste absolutely horrible. So, if I was stuck somewhere walking home, I would either use my filter first or my bleach, because, I just have to let it sit for 30 minutes and it's ready to go. So anyway, if you have any questions at all, leave me a comment below. I'll be happy to answer any of them. And I'm going to start practicing my confidence skills to make sure I know what to do in case of an emergency. And I hope you start thinking about, at least get your water situation handled. Much of us are, stocking up on food, but make sure in an emergency that you know how to make your water safe for drinking at least, okay? Anyway, have a great day, everybody.